Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having an awesome start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. We'll breeze on through this portion of the video pretty quickly because for most of the lower 48, there's not a whole lot of active weather ongoing for today, but today is sort of the beginning stages of a system. It's going to bring a lot of impacts weather-wise across the western and central U.S. So after we get past today's forecast portion of the video, we will have separate segments for the winter storm threat across like the central and southern Rockies, including places like Denver that could get a pretty substantial winter storm here in the coming 24 to 48 hours. We'll have a separate segment for the severe weather threat that is increasing for tomorrow, our Wednesday, across the middle of the country. And we'll talk about Thursday's severe weather threat too. So we'll speak in pretty good detail on this. So there's a lot of active weather upcoming over the next really just 2 to 3 days. So we got a lot to speak on for sure. And then after we kind of get past all of that, we'll speak a little bit right at the tail end of the video about what's to come for the eastern U.S. There's a lot of chatter about late March cold, and I think it's legit chatter, but there's also a lot of chatter about winter storm threats and things like that. We're not going to get super detailed on that, but we will show you sort of the run of the European model and what it's showing and why there's some chatter on that out there across the eastern U.S. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling. So we do got a lot of moisture out west, and I really wouldn't say a lot. It's very scattered about. It's raining pretty good across like central California. We got some snow adding up again, the Sierra Nevada. A little bit of higher elevation snow in like eastern Idaho. Same thing for northern Utah, northern Nevada, lower elevation rain. All in all, this is a pretty warm system, so the snow levels are not very low in this setup, but we do have rounds of heavy rain into the valley regions of and just the higher elevations also of like western Washington, western Oregon. Middle of the country, quiet. Eastern U.S., quiet. Only thing really is worth talking about is just a little bit of wraparound snow around this broad area of low pressure. Once again, for areas of Maine, Caribou seeing maybe a little bit of snow out there this morning. So that's what's going on right now across the country, the low 48 this morning. There is a severe weather threat for today. Now, models do disagree as far as short-range model guidance with the initiation of these storms and this marginal risk that does include Kansas City down to Springfield and everybody in between over to like Columbia, Missouri. There's a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So this is really driven off a 5% risk of damaging winds, so winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour, and then there is that 5% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Tornado chances are below 2%, so they do not show up on this map. So we'll see what happens with this. We do have that risk of just thunderstorms across the western U.S. in that light shaded of green color right here across like the northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest. Excessive rainfall outlook is below 5%, so it's not really showing up on this map. So we don't really have to worry about a risk of flash flooding today, so that's good. Watches, warnings, and advisories. I believe we do have some freeze watches up that's not showing up across the southeast, or some freeze warnings, but I mean for the most part it's very quiet across the eastern and central U.S. But your eyes kind of go to this area in Colorado. There's winter storm watches up for Denver and surrounding areas, and especially points south and even outside, like east of Denver, sort of in the high plains of like eastern Colorado. We have some winter storm watches. So winter storm watches also up into the Laramie Range and Wyoming and all these areas and communities here in southeast Wyoming. And then we have, these lingering winter weather advisories across areas of the Rockies. So let's move to the southeast, and we'll speak heavily on this here in a couple minutes. The southeast, this is where we're just going to breeze on through it. There's not a whole lot to talk about for today. Sorry about that, guys. I know it's very loud. I'm trying to clear my throat here, as you can tell. But to start out the southeast, it's very quiet. There's not really a whole lot to speak on at all. But we'll kind of breeze on through it. We get into this afternoon. Very nice day. Temperatures are starting to warm up after we had the cool down that kind of lasted, all of a couple days. A lot of these areas will kind of start your morning with a pretty chilly start, but temperatures will dramatically increase throughout the late morning and afternoon hours. We get into this evening, overnight hours, all the way into our Wednesday morning, and there's not really anything going on. Maybe the leftovers of this thunderstorm activity that could get going later on this evening up here in the Midwest could drift down into like southern sections of Illinois. But the Northeast today, any kind of snow up here in Maine will taper off. We might still continue to get some rounds of light snow into eastern Maine. All in all, though, I think this will stay mainly in like New Brunswick up here in Canada. But the rest of the Northeast, a pretty nice day. There's not really anything going on for today either. So as we move into the south central U.S., you see this low right here? That is actually our short wave with the low pressure associated with it. But this surface low associated with this short wave trough, if you will, this basically this piece of energy in the atmosphere will kind of move, and we'll kind of zoom into this here in a second when we get to the north central frame. But the HRRR model really doesn't have any initiation of any kind of storms in this marginal risk that the Storm Prediction Center does have up. The NAM does, and I'll show you that here in a second. So, I know you don't see anything around the Kansas City area and surrounding regions, but we definitely could get some storms later on this evening. But we'll talk about that here in a second. But you can see the storms eventually do get going here, right here where Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois connect, basically here in the Midwest. But the rest of the south central U.S., I mean, it's a pretty quiet day weather-wise. You can see our next kind of surface low that's going to basically produce a lot of severe weather potentially across sort of the Midwest region as we are getting to tomorrow. But this is also going to bring a winter weather event across the Rockies. And as we are getting into Wednesday morning, you see a lot of moisture across the Four Corners region. But, kickstarting our Wednesday morning, it's pretty quiet. But I think things do dramatically change as we get deeper into our Wednesday. But we'll speak more on that with a separate segment in this video. Today, pretty quiet for the south central U.S. The north central U.S., also pretty quiet. Just as quiet as the southeast and the northeast today. We get into this evening, well above average temperatures dominating your pattern. There's that little bit of energy down here that fires up. And we're going to zoom into the Midwest here in a second. But for the most part, 95% of this viewing area is very quiet. Now, we'll zoom into Missouri, Illinois, surrounding states. Now, this is the NAM. The NAM is different in the HRRR model. The NAM does fire up those storms in that marginal risk area around Kansas City and surrounding areas. Develops these storms. These could produce some severe hazards, some gusty and strong winds, some hail. I don't think the tornado threat's going to be I'll never say it's non-existent, but I don't think it'll be much of a threat in this area today. But we certainly need to watch for any kind of broad rotation that might tighten up and, maybe produce a tornado warning or something. But I think the biggest threat with this is some strong winds and some hail in this area. These storms could drift on down to Springfield maybe late this evening, maybe eventually into the Columbia, Missouri region. But I do think they lose some steam. But there has the potential that they could carry on into the overnight hours and, bring some stormy conditions across southern Missouri, southern Illinois. We'll see what happens with that. But definitely watch out for some storms around the KC region and surrounding areas. The western U.S., all this energy is associated with this storm system, this cutoff upper level trough, if you will. You can call it many things, but it's basically this cutoff low that gets cut off in the mainstream of things here across the lower 48. But this is bringing a lot of energy across the western U.S. in the form of just kind of periodic kind of showers and snow showers, depending on your elevation up here in the Pacific Northwest, the northern Rockies. And eventually, this energy begins to get into sort of the central Rockies and eventually into even the southern Rockies, the higher elevations of like northern Arizona, New Mexico. This is when we start to get into the overnight hours tonight. After midnight, we start to see the increase in moisture across this area right into here. Snow begins to fall pretty heavily across like western Colorado, Wyoming. I mean, there's even snow up here in southern sections of Montana. And this is when this storm starts to really amplify, becomes a much more significant storm system as we get deeper into our Wednesday. And we'll speak more on that. But, all in all, basically this entire region right up into here, just kind of waves of showers and snow showers depending on your elevation. So as far as snowfall between, today and tomorrow morning, several inches to over a couple feet of snow is possible in these higher elevated regions of the Cascades and Oregon and Washington. And then we head on over to Idaho and western. Come on, why's it got to do that here? Here we go. Idaho and western Montana, southwestern Montana, several inches. Someone could squeeze in another foot of snow between now and the next 24 hours. And then we just kind of take a look at the Rockies in general, just between now and the next 24 hours. And this is nothing too crazy, nothing unusual for Rocky standards out here. So definitely some moisture out there, but nothing too alarming or crazy. But the temperatures today, pretty wild stuff, guys. Temperatures are rising into the 70s, all the way into the southern portions of the UP and Michigan, the Great Lakes region. If you see my nose twitching at all, guys, it's like something is really making my nose itch. And I'm like right at the fringe of sneezing, but not quite there. So if you see that, that's why. But the southern tier of the country is nice. A beautiful April-like day here in March. Temperatures in the 70s and 80s in certain areas. Of course, it is always hard to escape winter in the Northeast. I think that's an area of the country that, you know, it definitely takes some of the slowest. It's the slowest to warm up when you transition from winter to spring. And, you know, today is no different, where temperatures are in the 30s and 40s. But you might climb close to around 60 around the New York City area. We'll see what happens. But the central portion of the country, very, very warm, well above average. You're going to start to get to below average temperatures as basically lower pressure begins to dominate the western U.S., but still very warm across the central U.S. And, you know, most of the eastern Rockies is still above average. A warm day today in like Denver ahead of a winter storm that'll move in over the next 24 to 48 hours. So let's talk about the severe weather threats for tomorrow. So there's going to be a bit of a triple point that gets met here with another, not associated with the one today, but another sort of short wave that moves into the region with an associated surface low. This is going to bring ingredients for severe weather, overlapping of the kinematics and thermodynamics we talk so heavily on when we speak on severe weather events. This has a chance to overachieve, okay? Things have kind of increased, I would say, pretty substantially for tomorrow. We'll see if we'll end up getting an enhanced risk, but you got a slight risk. This does include Kansas City and basically this area right here of northeast Kansas, northwest Missouri, southeast Nebraska, and then you got a marginal risk that gets all the way up to close to Des Moines, Iowa. So I think this will kind of move around a little bit as we're trying to figure out what we call the CAM models and these short-range mesoscale models, trying to figure out where these storms are going to fire. There is a 5% risk of a tornado now in Kansas City and surrounding areas. So a legit risk of a tornado in this brown area. 2% risk of a tornado that has this weird little slender all the way down to almost Dallas. Does include Tulsa. Winds, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And guys, there is not only a 15% risk of hail, but you see the black outline region right here, which does include Kansas City. There's also a 10% risk of significant hail, which means there's a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inches in 2 inch in diameter or larger in this area. So, you know, we certainly got to watch out for this. This has definitely got kind of one of those overachiever events kind of written on it, but there's a chance that, you know, it might not do a whole lot. And we kind of watch what happens here. We have this little corridor right here of low-level moisture. These are dew points, not... I'm sorry. Sorry to have to keep clearing my throat, guys. I don't know what's going on this morning. Feel perfectly fine, but it's like it knows I'm trying to make a video or something. But low-level moisture builds into the plains here all the way up into the Midwest. And, you know, you got this little pool of low-level moisture with dew points are reaching into the low 60s. This gets all the way up into like the far southeast corner of Nebraska. And this is just your classic little triple point that gets met here. And I think tomorrow will be a classic case of how severe weather can occur with dew points only in the 50s. Because I think that's about as high as they're going to get. We'll have some isolated low 60s in this area. I think it's very possible. But, you know, this is going to be some interesting weather. I think that tomorrow is kind of one of those sneaky events where we could get some just wild storm motion, quick storm motion. We need to watch out for this event. It's just a bit of a triple point. A triple point means basically where your best instability, your best lift, and your best kinematics meet in one spot. Basically the best overlapping of ingredients right near the actual surface low, which will be right here in this region. So this is that little nose of low-level moisture. You combine that with the favorable kinematics and check out the nose of mid-level flow that kind of works into this region. You got this, let's move it a little bit further. We got this area of kind of 30 to 40 knot mid-level flow in this region. That'll be just enough lift to get these storms going, but I could see that being what we call the fail mode with this. Maybe not enough lift to really get these storms going, but if they do, they have the capability of producing all hazards in this kind of setup right here in this region, which does include Kansas City. Okay, and I like looking at Weather Bell when we kind of look at what these storms look like on the surface, but there's no great geographical region I can click on for Weather Bell, so I'm going to use Pivotal Weather for this. And you see what happens here. Here's that low right here, pretty stout surface low associated with a short wave. This moves in. And look how these storms explode. A little mini dry line. And you can see that dry line right in here. I mean, it's not a mini one. It's a pretty stout one. You go from dew points in the 30s, 20s to dew points in the 50s and 60s in a matter of about an hour. So, I mean, that's a pretty gnarly little dry line right into here that's really going to help aid in the dynamics of this. And there's some storms firing up down here, near, what is that, near like Wichita. We got some storms kind of north of Tulsa. But I'm telling you, it's these storms right in here. This one, this area of storms, these storms down here, these could produce some quick moving tornadic supercells. They're very fast moving. Typically, the closer you are to that surface low, the faster the storm motion. The more enhanced the kinematics are, which is the wind flow aloft. So therefore, the atmosphere is moving a lot quicker when you get closer to that actual surface low a lot of the times. So models are going to struggle with this kind of setup. You very well could get more supercells developing into here in different areas. This is just kind of one run. And then look at these. I mean, this is later tomorrow evening once the sun goes down. Kansas City right in here. You got to watch out for these cells into here. I mean, so it's going to be a wild event. I really do. And you can see the beginning stages of the winter storm evolving across the Rockies. But I think tomorrow is going to be, and I know I've said this many times already in the last 5 to 10 minutes, tomorrow is going to be a sneaky severe weather event, one that could increase again. We could get another kind of category increase here in the next 12 to 24 hours. I could definitely see it happening. So this is all really, associated with this lower pressure, this big blue blob that you're seeing over the western U.S. But this is really going to bring a legit winter storm across the central and southern Rockies, this area right here. And what happens is this thing kind of moves down and you have embedded pieces of energy that kind of shoot around sort of the base or the eastern edge of this trough and basically slingshots. I wish I had something to draw it. I did not pull up my drawer, if you will. Energy basically slingshots embedded pieces of energy around the base of this sort of blue area right here, promoting rounds of severe weather day after day. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a several-day event, but you get what I'm saying, today into tomorrow and eventually into Thursday. But this is also going to bring kind of its own cold air, enough of its own cold air to where on the cooler side of these surface lows, you're most likely going to have a major winter storm across areas of the Rockies and the Wyoming and especially Colorado. And this gets completely pinched off and it surges to the southwest, continues to bring a lot of weather for this area. And then we have to watch this area right here, which at one point was trying to pick up this huge southern stream cutoff low, but now it isn't. We'll speak more on that here in a second. But there is going to be that legit winter storm risk as we kind of start off tomorrow morning, just like we did for the severe weather portion of tomorrow's event. We'll start off for tomorrow morning for the winter storm threat. And here's the central Rockies right here. A lot of snow already falling across the Rockies, but check out how the moisture really increases as you have the deepening of that surface low associated with that short wave. And look at the snow that begins to really fall in Denver probably tomorrow night. And this really gets going, I would say, late tomorrow night into Thursday morning. And an all-out winter storm really unfolds, along the Front Range and just basically the eastern side of the Rockies here in Colorado. Snow up here in Wyoming, I think more so falls. I think the snow in Wyoming more so falls probably tomorrow evening into tomorrow night. And this thing really gets cranking here, kind of here in central Colorado, Denver, areas like that, as we are getting more so into our late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Snows pretty heavily all the way into Thursday evening. And check out how all the energy kind of gets shunted a little bit further south and southwest, where this becomes a pretty substantial winter storm for areas of like northern Arizona, higher elevations of Arizona, New Mexico, and even southern Utah. And check out all the snow flying around across southern Colorado. And this continues, guys. I mean, this starts to kind of lose its own cold air a little bit. But man, we get into the Friday evening, we still have a system ongoing in the Four Corners region. And finally, as we get to kind of the later half of this coming weekend, things begin to calm down this region. But we kind of look at the short range model guidance. You can really see sort of the beginning stages of this winter storm. Look at this heavy snow falling across central Wyoming. Even could get some snow maybe here in like the Black Hills of South Dakota. And then some heavy rain could switch to heavy snow across extreme like western Nebraska Wednesday evening. And then check out the heavy snow sort of drifting through Wyoming, getting all the way down into Colorado around midnight. Well, I mean, it's already fallen before midnight, but it really starts to pick up in the middle of the night, I would say Wednesday night. And you're starting to see these darker blues and kind of convective feeds into Denver. And then it gets cold enough where all this kind of shifts to snow. And then this is when we could get several inches, maybe over a foot of snow in Denver. A lot of times these systems really increase as we get a little bit closer. So I can see the forecast increasing in this area. And this is as far out as we can go in the short range model. And this is really just the beginning stages of this winter storm around the Denver metro area and surrounding areas. Closer look at those winter storm watches, Denver right into here, surrounding areas, all the way down to Colorado Springs, and just all these areas. So we kind of take a huge look at snowfall between now and Thursday evening, and you can see the epicenter of this event's over Colorado. I mean, some areas getting over 2 feet of snow, but pretty substantial winter storm across portions of Wyoming also, and also the higher terrain of Utah. But let's go on and get a closer look at this. So this is the latest information from the National Weather Service out of Boulder, which covers the Denver area and all these other regions you see on your screen. This was issued around 3:30 this morning. Right now, and guys, this could change a lot. As of right now, they're calling for 8 to 12 inches of snow in Denver. Evergreen, 18 to 24. Dramatically different, right? Castle Rock, 12 to 18. Colorado Springs, 8 to 12. Even a little bit of snow outside into these areas right into here. Fort Morgan, 1 to 2. Sterling, 1 to 2. Greeley, 2 to 3. Fort Collins, 4 to 6. But you're starting to get to the foothills, guys. This is going to be a pretty substantial winter storm. And then we head on up the road to Wyoming. Cheyenne, 6 to 13 inches of snow. Laramie, 6 to 12 inches. The Laramie range could certainly get a lot of snow from this. Arlington, 7 to 14. The ranges are certainly a lot more wide, right? I mean, you might get a half a foot. You might get a foot. So it's going to be a tough one to figure out. It really is. And then we got that severe weather threat. And we'll fine-tune that again, guys, probably tomorrow morning. And then we got this severe weather threat for Thursday. Slight risk now all the way from the heart of Texas, folks, all the way into the Midwest. And this looks like it's going to be broken up into two main sections, kind of a bimodal severe weather threat. One up here in the Midwest and one down here for the south central U.S. And you already have not only a 15% risk of severe weather, but you also have in the black outline region, that's saying when there's going to be a 10% risk of significant severe weather. At day 3, we don't have things broken up in a tornado, wind, and hail category yet. That happens when you get into day 2, where confidence increases on what's going to unfold. But folks, I mean, they're already sounding the alarm to me on what this looks like a more significant severe weather event than the few days we dealt with last week. I mean, they already have a 10% risk of significant severe weather in these areas. So, and really, what's driving this is this surge of warm, moist air that's going to get all the way, we'll take it all the way into around Thursday afternoon. You see dew points creeping all the way into the 60s, all the way into the Midwest, Missouri, Illinois. And then we got deep moisture down here in the south central U.S. where you would expect it in this kind of setup, deeper moisture. Dew points well into the upper 60s, even some low 70s. So severe weather is definitely going to be ongoing. in a lot of these areas. It's just trying to figure out the specifics of this. And, you mix that with what does our kinematics look like, the lift in the atmosphere. I think you'll have plenty of lift for thunderstorms up here where your belt, if you will, of mid-level flow is the highest, 70, 80 knot mid-level jet. What about the storms down here? I do think there'll be enough what I like to call oomph in the atmosphere to really fire these storms also. But definitely not as much forcing in the atmosphere down here. But I definitely think there's enough with just enough kind of surface troughing in place for those lift for those thunderstorms. But there certainly will be ingredients. Definitely a stripe of moderate cape, basically that storm fuel in this area right in here for sure. So after that, guys, and we're not going to speak heavily on this, that is our system that's going to bring a lot of weather. But this huge upper trough with an associated pretty stout cold front with energy associated with it digs down. Huge area of lower pressure, digs down into this weekend. And this is going to bring a shot of cold air across the eastern U.S. most likely. And a lot of people that are in that spring fever, this is going to kind of snap you back to reality and make you realize, hey, it's still March. We're not quite there yet. And we got to watch because it looks like there might be some reinforcing shots of cold air after this. But that's on out there. No point in getting deep into that. But there's going to be some energy associated with it. Pieces of energy that's going to be rounding around this base. But, the latest global models really are not showing anything substantial. We get into Sunday morning, we got this storm system riding across the south, big trough. You can see that 540 line. This is indicating a lot of cold air dropping down. Looks like you have some sort of low Sunday afternoon, but the cold air isn't in place yet. This is probably going to get a lot of energy ongoing in the atmosphere Monday in the form of probably just a blustery, wintry day across the Ohio Valley. A lot of snow showers, but no concrete huge winter storm like some of the models have been indicating over the last couple of days. But that could change. All of a sudden they could show something. There's been some really wild GFS runs over the last 24 hours. I definitely think we're going to have kind of a weirder second half of March than first half of March. I know you're thinking, what does that mean, weird? I just think there's going to be some outside of average things that are going to happen. I really do. I think there's going to be some late season shots of cold air that's really going to just do some weird stuff. So we'll figure that out in due time. There's a lot out in front of us to figure out first, but that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a wonderful day.